some people will tell me that their voices are not all bad and they don't necessarily want to get rid of them.
Oh, man. That's a can of worms. That is a can of worms. When I was telling my psychiatrist that I was experiencing religious delusions and I went on antipsychotics to get rid of the God who hated me, but not necessarily for the voices that had helped me so much, I ended up losing the others. And I think about the voices that I don't hear anymore all the time because I miss them that much.
You're listening to Inside Bipolar, a Healthline Media podcast, where we tackle bipolar disorder using real-world examples and the latest research.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Nicole, board-certified psychiatrist, and Gabe's not with us today. We will have Kit Wallace with us. Kit Wallace is a YouTuber and mental health advocate who lives with schizoaffective disorder. And I must say, she has the most amazing social media handle I have ever seen in all of my days of scrolling social media. SchizoKitzo. Kit, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Nicole. I'm really excited about this.
I'm super excited too. So I really want to know, SchizoKitzo. It's one of those things. It's so cool sounding. I would imagine, though, it throws people off a little bit because it's like, ooh, can you really call yourself schizo? Like, should you say that? It's so derogatory. How did you come up with SchizoKitzo?
So I got the idea for SchizoKitzo kind of out of the blue. I have been a YouTuber for a very long time. I used to do lifestyle content, but when I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, I wanted to start a whole new channel. And so I was actually out with my dad one night and I had just the idea just came into my head because SchizoKitzo, my name's Kit. So it made perfect sense to kind of do that. And so I told him, I'm like, Dad, I think I want to start a new YouTube channel named SchizoKitzo. And he looked at me wide-eyed and went, write that down. And it was set in stone from then on.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that your dad's like, absolutely. That sounds amazing. I mean, that's how I would have felt because when Gabe said to me, hey, we're going to do these episodes, I want you to do them with Kit Wallace. Oh, and her social media handle is SchizoKitzo. I probably felt the same enthusiasm. I was like, what? That's amazing. And we love Gabe, but I mean, how often do I get to hang out with SchizoKitzo in real life? So here we are. So one of the reasons that we thought we would bring Kit on to do some episodes, one, we never get to talk about girl stuff. Gabe is always talking about like, I'm a middle-aged white man and I'm a middle-aged man and I'm a man and all these things, but we never get to talk to women generally. I think I've done one other episode with a woman. And so I thought this would be a great time for us to get together and talk about mental illness in a little bit different light. Also, Kit's diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which we don't talk about a lot. And a lot of you are thinking, well, she's got schizoaffective disorder. What's she doing there? That has nothing to do with bipolar disorder. And you're wrong, because with schizoaffective disorder, you can have bipolar type. But I will say, not a lot of people who eventually land on a schizoaffective disorder diagnosis are initially diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. So Kit, how was your diagnosis journey?
So the short story of how I got diagnosed, and it was a long process, but the short story is that when I was 18, I was diagnosed with cyclothymia. And when I was a junior in college, that diagnosis was upgraded to bipolar 2. And then after college, I ended up with bipolar 1 with psychotic features. And then in late 2020, I ended up with the bipolar type of schizoaffective disorder. So for years, I had a bipolar diagnosis. And then my doctor was like, wait a minute. And then schizoaffective just kind of entered my chart from there on.
Wow. Did you have the same doctor the whole time?
I did. Yes, I did. I had the same psychiatrist for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I have a new guy now, new nurse practitioner. He's great. But I had a psychiatrist for 10 years. From the very beginning, he saw me.
Wow. That part I'm jumping up and down about and super excited about, because I do think that that's how this is supposed to happen. You're supposed to find somebody You're supposed to see them consistently. They're supposed to get to know you, all your trends, all your triggers, all your signs that you're having an episode. They're supposed to be able to get to know all those things about you, because over 10 years, I mean, that's a lot of visits. They probably saw you more than they saw some of their family members in that period of time. You get to know people really well. It can be very frustrating, though, for patients when they are constantly being told, and it feels like constantly being told, that their diagnosis is changing. Oh, you have cyclothymia. Oh, never mind. Now we think it's bipolar 2. Oh, upgrade. We think now it's bipolar 1. Oh, never mind. Scratch that. Schizoaffective disorder. How frustrating was that for you?
I would say that I was more frustrated that my condition worsened over time. Not so much upset with, say, my doctor for telling me that I had a new diagnosis that could potentially indicate something more severe is, happening. But I was more frustrated that my mental illness, it was only getting worse. It wasn't getting better. So that was my main frustration with it. But when he finally diagnosed me with schizoaffective, I was like, oh, this is the puzzle piece that makes everything make sense. And I was far from upset about it. I was a little confused, but if anything, it helped.
How did you educate yourself? So you said, I educated myself, got to learn a little bit more. How did you go about doing that?
So I work in a research lab, which means I have access to PubMed. So I immediately searched schizoaffective disorder on PubMed, printed off 10 papers, close to probably 10, 12 papers, a lot of papers. And I spent like several nights just reading papers, highlighting, making notes, because I wanted to know everything I possibly could about it.
That's awesome. We probably should take a quick step aside and define schizoaffective disorder for the listeners, because like you said, wasn't a lot out there, because not a lot of people know about schizoaffective disorder. When we think about illnesses like schizophrenia and we start thinking like, oh, 1% of the population has schizophrenia, we think more like 0.3% of the population has schizoaffective disorder. And it's controversial really isn't the word. I mean, controversial makes it seem like psychiatrists are in a room yelling at each other about schizoaffective disorder, but we're not. But there are a group of psychiatrists who think it's not even a real thing. It's probably just bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. By definition, schizoaffective disorder, a person has to meet the schizophrenia criteria. So they have to meet that, what we call criterion A. If you're doing research like Kit, you might see the criterion A of schizophrenia mentioned. That's the basic things that you have to have. And that's the delusions, the hallucinations, the disorganized stuff. You have to have basically schizophrenia before you can get a schizoaffective disorder diagnosis. You also, on top of the fact that you meet criteria for schizophrenia, have to then either meet criteria for bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder. So essentially, you're dealing with two different disorders combined, melted into one. And that's where we get the schizoaffective disorder, because we refer to the mood disorders as affective disorders. So you have the schizo, the schizophrenia part, you have the affective part, the mood, combine it together, schizoaffective disorder. So that's where we are. So you mentioned that you did your research, not a lot out there. Nobody really knows what's going on. Schizoaffective disorder, I would have to say, is mad disrespected in the mental health world. We don't research it. We don't really talk about it. Not a lot of people know what it is. Like, what do we do to bring more awareness to this disorder?
Well, I'm trying to do that by being an advocate for it, because there's not many advocates out there who have schizoaffective disorder. And so I'm trying to fill that space myself. And I do my absolute best to advocate for the disorder, because I want to share with people that it's not like people hear schizo and they think schizophrenia, and they don't realize that there's a mood component to it, and it confuses people. And a lot of times when I say, schizoaffective, people don't hear everything after schizo. And so trying to educate people through my own work is one way I can do it. But I think more advocates need to be out there to do it. And I really think that's the way to raise awareness for it, because it's hard to convince people to care when there's no one out there sharing their lived experience and talking about what it's like, and really diving deep into the experience of the disorder to make it just a little bit more human.
Do you think it matters? I think there are some people that will say, well, what difference does it make? why do we even go through all the effort to diagnose schizoaffective disorder? We treat it just like we do schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. What is your opinion on that statement? Do you feel like it matters?
I feel like it matters because it fits me and what I've gone through. Like, I have the psychotic aspect of my life and I have the mood disorder aspect of my life. And knowing there's a disorder out there that actually fits those pieces together is really cool to me. And I really like that that exists. So I do think it does matter because there's people like me out there that fit it. And I think it's important for us to have a place in the mental health world as a result.
Fun fact, or not so fun fact, schizoaffective disorder historically is diagnosed more in women than men. And this question will come up with patients, or patients will do their research and they'll come to me and they're like, hey, Dr. Nicole, why is this? What's going on with this? Why are women diagnosed more? Typically, we think that maybe women are diagnosed more because women tend to have more depression than men. Maybe that plays a part. Maybe there's a genetic reason. Maybe there's a hormonal component. We don't know, but we do know that women are diagnosed more than men. In your travels, in your advocacy work, in your connecting with other folks with schizoaffective disorder, do you see that play out in the people that follow you and support you who you know also have the disorder?
Well, I do know when I look at my analytics on YouTube, the vast majority of my audience is women. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. And my running theory on this is that men are traditionally not encouraged to share their feelings, share their problems, share their mental health issues, but women are more likely to do that. And so I think that could be a reason why it's more diagnosed in women than men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that with depression also. I completely believe women are more likely to say, I'm depressed. Women are more likely to say, I feel down. I feel sad. I just don't enjoy life like I used to. And we know that men may be more likely to be irritable or agitated and not say the words, I'm depressed or I'm sad or I'm down. So I agree. I agree with that part. And I think that with bipolar disorder, you don't have to say it. If you have a manic episode, chances are we're going to see it. And you don't have to say, I feel elevated. I feel expansive. I feel extremely agitated. We're all going to see it and we're all going to know that you're going through that episode. I want to go back to you and your diagnosis.
Okay, sounds good.
I want to go back because I am really fascinated with your progression from cyclothymia to bipolar 2 to bipolar 1 to schizoaffective. When you had the cyclothymia, and you said you were in high school, right?
Mm-hmm. I was a senior in high school, yeah.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what kind of symptoms were you having when you were diagnosed with cyclothymia? Because that's also another area. We don't really talk about cyclothymia a ton. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So my early signs of having any kind of mood symptoms started when I was in elementary school. I would go through these periods of an elevated state where I would clean anything and everything. And it would last for a couple hours. Sometimes it would last more than a day. But I knew that I would have these periods reliably show up. And so I learned to kind of take advantage of them when they happened. But it wasn't until I was in the 8th grade that I started experiencing what I believe to be symptoms of depression. And this was around the time that I started becoming suicidal and I began self-harming as a result to cope with everything that was going on with me. And I went to my parents and I said, hey, I have these symptoms. Can I please see a doctor? And they said no, which was not good. They're still good people, but back then they made the wrong call. And on top of that, I started hearing voices in the 8th grade as well. But I didn't know they were voices. I just thought I was thinking creatively. So I dismissed it and did not even think possibly that I could be hallucinating 24/7. So time passed and I ended up late in high school, my senior year. And I knew that when I turned 18, I could go see a psychiatrist because I would be in charge of my health. I didn't need my parents' permission to do anything. So when I was 18, ended up in my psychiatrist's office and he diagnosed me with cyclothymia after hearing that I'd been struggling with symptoms for years and years because part of the criteria for cyclothymia is you have to have it for 2 years or longer. And I definitely fit that. And he actually put me on a mood stabilizer, which absolutely changed my life. And I'm still on that mood stabilizer to this day.
Wow. Now, did you not tell anyone that you had the psychosis or the hallucinations? Like, did you keep that to yourself? Is that not something that you were open with?
In the beginning, I had this one voice who went by the name of Twilight, like that was his name. And he was there in my head 24/7. He just appeared one night while I was about to go to sleep, and he just never went away. But he was very nice. He was very kind. He was my friend. And I told my mom about it. I told my dad about it. But I didn't really tell anyone else. My mom thought he might have been an angel. And so when I was in church at the time, and when I was in church, I kind of thought, oh my God, I have an angel in my head. Like, this is awesome. And other people talked about in sermons about like the great counselor. And I thought, oh, maybe he's the great counselor. Maybe he's like the Holy Spirit. It had this religious coloring to it.
Okay.
But then he kind of became more human and less positive, so to speak. So less angelic in a way. And because he started showing some kind of faults of character, I kind of just quit talking about him entirely. And I just stayed quiet from then on out because I thought I was just thinking creatively. I didn't think I was hallucinating, but I just kind of learned to shut up about it. And I just stayed that way. Did
your doctor know that you were having the psychosis?
He did not, because I never selected on the questionnaire. On the questionnaire that I filled out every visit, it said, are you hearing or seeing things that other people don't? I always hesitated to say yes, but I always said no instead.
I suspected that, Kit, because I feel like if your psychiatrist had known that you were having the hallucinations, that we would have skipped the cyclothymia and probably bipolar 2 altogether and just jumped straight to bipolar 1. What made you not tell the doctor? You said you liked them, you felt comfortable with them, but there was something that was stopping you from being able to open up about that. What was it?
So what I experience is something that does not get enough attention, but is experienced by a lot of people in the patient community. And it's that I experience what are called internal auditory hallucinations, meaning that the hallucinations I get, I hear them in my own inner headspace in the same places you might find thoughts or an internal monologue. So I have these personalities in my head that show up, my voices, and I hear them in my head. And I, for many years, thought that you could only have hallucinations and hear voices if you heard them outside of your head.
Okay.
I couldn't find anything saying that I could hear voices inside my head at all. Nothing on the internet, not really. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not hearing voices. It's fine. And I do want to point out that there was this one time where I was put on an antipsychotic to treat a mood episode, and it didn't do anything to the voices. And one of the voices in my head came back and he said, oh, looks like I'm not a voice in your head after all. I'm just you, because he wasn't affected by the medication. So that further made me not want to say anything about it.
Okay. What changed, though? What made you finally say, I probably need to tell somebody about this?
I think it was when I had my psychotic break. In 2018, my symptoms got absolutely horrible. I fell deep into religious delusions, and I lost everything. Like, I could not tell up from down. I was losing friends. I'd ended up getting kicked out of my apartment, and yeah, it ruined my life. My psychotic break ruined my life. But towards the end of the episode, I kind of had a moment where the delusions were calming down, the hallucinations were calming down, and I started wondering if what I was experiencing was psychosis. Like, I kind of had this inkling in my head that what if this isn't all real? And so I remember I had this moment where I was like Googling and researching and figuring out what was psychosis, what wasn't. And I remember thinking that if it was real, I was screwed. But if it wasn't real, I was also screwed. And because both of them in my head were equally terrible, I went after the one that said, let's see if it's not real. That was when I was like, I'm just going to tell my doctor everything. I'm going to tell my doctor everything and see what happens.
And we're back with Kit Wallace discussing schizoaffective disorder. One of the things that patients say to me frequently is, you're going to be mad at me, but, and then there's usually some big revelation that happens after. There's usually something, there's usually something they tell me that either they've been withholding from me for a long time or something they've done that they think I'm going to be upset about. Did you go through any of that internal thought of, oh my gosh, he's going to be so upset that this has been going on for years and I never told him?
Well, I did wonder what he would say once I told him that things were not what they'd been the whole time. But honestly, like my whole conversation with him telling him, hey, I think I'm hearing things and I'm definitely believing things that aren't real potentially. He didn't seem fazed in the slightest at all.
Yeah. And I want everybody to hear that, because I do believe that people put so much weight into what they think we're thinking. I will say patients have a way of making all kinds of assumptions about what I'm thinking, what I'm going to think, how I'm going to feel about something. We do not get upset with you when you share something with us. If anything, we think, oh my gosh, this is the piece of the puzzle that I've been missing. This is what I needed to know to figure this out. I am sure there was almost a sense of relief, because at that point, he'd been taking care of you for how long?
Years.
It's
Yeah.
so there was this relationship, and probably this thought of, we are just not getting this all wrapped up. We are not getting this together. For us, it's like, whew, wow, like we have more information to use to be able to get you to the place that you want to be. Ultimately, it is always our goal to get you to a place of the highest level of stability. Having all the pieces is what we need. So don't ever think that your Dr. Nicole is out there mad at you or stewing after you leave. Like, I can't believe Kit was psychotic for all these years and never told me. We are not upset. If anything, we are happy that we have all the information that we need. So do not withhold that kind of information from your Dr. Nicole. You also mentioned, Kit, that Twilight was pleasant and you enjoyed hearing him. You felt like it was more of a positive thing for you in the beginning. Some people will tell me that their voices are not all bad and they don't necessarily want to get rid of them. Have you gone through a period where you thought, I don't know that I want to get rid of him?
Oh man, that's a can of worms. That is a can of worms. Oh my goodness. So Twilight wasn't the only one. He was just the first. The one that I actually heard the most over the years, one by the name of Orion, and he popped up shortly after Twilight was there. But Orion became my best friend, to the point where I would talk to him in my head internally. I used my internal monologue to speak with him all the time. He would help me calm down when I was having anxiety attacks. He would hype me up when I had to go meet a professor that I was really nervous about, and he would help me out on my science exams. He'd help me study. I would explain my concepts to him. And honestly, I felt like he was very, very good. And so when I was telling my psychiatrist that I was experiencing religious delusions, and although I didn't say religious delusions, but religious delusions at the time, I told him, I'm like, is there any way I can keep the voices? Because I like them. And it wasn't just Twilight and Orion either. I still had others, but it was really sad to me that he was like, we could maybe adjust the dose, but we have to get rid of the heavy stuff. And so I ended up losing him, losing the others. And I still do hear voices every now and then now. Like I get a good conversation maybe once or twice a week, and I hear fleeting comments pretty regularly, but it's not them. And so I definitely would say that I went on antipsychotics to get rid of the God that I had worshipped and who hated me, but not necessarily for the voices that had helped me so much. But at the time when I was going on an antipsychotic and being treated for my psychosis, I didn't want the voices to go away at all. I wanted to keep them because they were so helpful.
So you only allowed the good ones to go away because the bad ones were so bad, and you needed to get them under control.
Yes, unfortunately for me, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tough for a psychiatrist. Like, it's tough for me because I I think fundamentally we think voice is bad, no voice is good. Like we just like that is the framework we function in when it comes to treating psychosis. We always think of it in terms of let's just get rid of it. Let's just get rid of it. No voices. For a while after I finished all my training, my job, my big girl psychiatry job was with an assertive community treatment team. So doing home visits for a lot of adults who had schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, but people who really severe illnesses. To be a part of those programs, you have to have had multiple hospitalizations or be at risk of homelessness or law enforcement touches or very severe illness. You know, you have to have demonstrated an inability to engage in traditional outpatient care. And it is in that role that I really had to check my own biases and thoughts about psychosis and what it looks like and what's okay and what's not, and allowing people with psychosis to have the autonomy to decide, I want to keep my voices. They're not bothering me. I'm not bothering anybody. That was a really hard space for me as a psychiatrist to sit in. And I think a lot of psychiatrists struggle with that. Um, have you run into that with your treatment, with your doctors, with your medical team, of you saying, I think I'm okay, and them saying, well, but can't we just get them a little bit quieter? Can't we get rid of them? Can't we get them to go away?
So yes, in a way. So I was hospitalized in May of 2019, which was before I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, but I had a diagnosis of bipolar 1 with psychotic features. So I was taking an antipsychotic that was treating my psychosis and my mood symptoms, which was great. But when I was in the psych ward, I remember sitting down with the psychiatrist and telling him, yeah, I still hear voices and they're okay. But he upped my antipsychotic anyway. Like without, just because I heard something, I was still hearing things, he just bumped it up to the maximum dose. And I later, when I was out of the psych ward and I talked with my actual psychiatrist, we lowered it back down. But it was interesting to me that he just heard that, oh, I still hear voices, and he just bumped it up without saying anything. He was very quick too. I was in and out of his office in 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of us fall in the category of thinking, oh, voice is bad, no voice is good, without much discussion as to how do you feel about the voices. I don't know. I don't know that without having that experience and treating people who had psychosis most of the time, regardless of what we did medication wise, I don't know that I would have the same outlook, because I don't think I had it coming out of training. Even though I had worked some with this program as a trainee, I think there was still always a part of me that was like, yeah, voice is bad, no voice is good. That's always the goal. And it really never occurred to me until I was actually in training and doing the work that some people are really okay with their voices and want to keep them, and that's okay. And the concept of you almost mourning the loss of your voices, because I've had patients get really mad at me when the good voices were taken away. They've been really ticked off because, like you said, psychosis is isolating. These mood disorders are isolating. And those voices, those entities become your, quote unquote, air quote, friends. They become your friends. They become your people. They're your squad. They're your tribe. And having them go away really does in some ways leave you alone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think about the voices that I don't hear anymore all the time because I miss them that much. But I also want to make it clear for the audience here that hallucinating in general is not a positive thing. It's part of the disorder. I technically don't want it to happen at all because it's just the disordering. And psychosis is bad for the brain. That's been shown. So I do want to make it clear that I know hallucinating is not a positive experience in the sense of like good for me health wise. But I do still kind of have this dialectic of also missing the good stuff and missing the good times I had with them and wanting those good times back. So I really do struggle with it. And I'm conflicted about it a lot of times because I kind of live in those two different realities in a way.
It can be very conflicting. And I can see that now from both sides. I can see both sides of that coin. But we do also have to take into account that with psychosis typically comes other things. It is rare that a person tells me my voices are really positive. I don't really care that they're there. I'm just plugging away with life, doing fine. Nothing's wrong aside from me hearing the occasional happy voice. It's usually coming with lots of mood symptoms if you have schizoaffective disorder. And a lot of times when we try to get those mood symptoms under better control, the psychosis goes along with it. Once you're more stable, we tend to see the psychosis improve and clear up. And so they are almost a casualty of your mood improving and becoming more stable. But psychosis is not a great thing. So yes, psychosis is not great for your brain. We know that. We just want what's best for your brain. And I do know that sometimes my desire for you to have the most stability and what is best for your brain, sometimes it's lost in what is actually best. Like what you believe to be best and what I believe to be best might not be the same thing.
Yeah, there's that disconnect sometimes when it comes to patients and their providers. And I know a lot of patients are frustrated that they almost feel like providers are black and white in a lot of ways. Lacking a gray area is something a lot of patients seem to experience with providers. Like they feel like their psychiatrists don't listen to them when they talk about this stuff.
I get that a lot. People come to me having seen other people and they say, oh, I'm switching doctors because my last doctor didn't really listen to me. I didn't feel like they listened very well. And I do think part of that is systemic. And I do think the system doesn't give us the space to do that, because I do think a lot of us would love to just talk to you about your illness and how you feel about it and get to know more of you as a person versus you, the schizoaffective disorder sitting in front of me. We would love that. And that is just not a luxury that we have had. And I, having done the home visits and being able to go to people's homes and talk to them about how they live and their illness and talk to their family members and, sit on somebody's sofa at their dining room table and talk about their disorder and not have a time crunch on me. That was the best job I ever had from a systemic standpoint. And I've not had anything since then that has compared to that level of relationship building with my patients. It was the most amazing thing ever. So I do believe it's not so much that all of us are out there, we don't care and we don't want to listen to what you have to say. The system just doesn't let that happen for a lot of us. I mean, visits are short and we have to hit the basics. And if we have to prioritize what's most important, we're going to hit those high points and we're going to miss out on some of the more important things.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you are taking medication now. You said you're still on the same mood stabilizer you've been on since day one. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you're still seeing a psychiatrist, though a new one from the one who started your journey with you. Has therapy been a part of your treatment plan?
Therapy is definitely a part of my treatment. It's arguably one of the most important things in my entire treatment. And I've been in therapy for 17 years. Primarily cognitive behavioral therapy, but also we added dialectical behavior therapy after I got out of the mental hospital. And so my current therapist is my best therapist so far. She's very well trained in dealing with what I go through and the problems I experience as a result of that. And she is also trained in DBT. So I went through DBT classes and
that's great.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love DBT. But yeah, my therapist, she's solid. She's a huge part of my treatment, and she is to blame for a lot of the success I've had with my recovery.
A lot of times people say, well, you're psychotic. Therapy won't help you. Specifically with your psychosis, how do you see that therapy was able to help you progress?
Therapy, really, when it comes to psychosis, my therapist, we covered coping with the trauma that my psychosis caused. My psychotic break was incredibly traumatic. It had a lot of religious themes that made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I could do no right. And I believed in this God that was angry at me all the time. And there were several moments where I was not in a good place, and one moment where I basically broke because it got to be too much. And so my therapist really helped me come back from that and cope with that experience and let me just talk about it in a safe place where I wouldn't be judged for what happened, because I was very filled with shame about the whole experience. There's a lot of shame with the psychosis I experienced because, oh, I did all that and it wasn't real. And so I have to deal with that. But she's helped me cope with that part. So she's helped recovery in that sense. When it comes to my day-to-day hallucinations and whatnot, I don't really talk to her about that. She knows they happen, but they don't really cause distress. So we don't really talk about them in therapy. My therapy sessions are mainly geared towards dealing with other aspects of my life that are difficult to deal with, or my bipolar side of the condition. Bipolar causes a lot of problems, interpersonal problems, problems with people, problems with myself. I still struggle with self-harm. So she helps me deal with that kind of thing. So yeah, really helpful.
I'm glad to hear that you had such a great experience, specifically in dealing with your psychosis. People will avoid going to therapy to deal with those kinds of things because they say, well, that's not real. I'm not going to go to a therapist and talk about my hallucinations or talk about the things that were going on in my life that weren't real. But I don't think we can underestimate the fact that what you were experiencing was very real to you. It might not have been anybody else's reality, but it was 100% yours. And having a therapist to help you work through that has probably made a lot of difference for you in your recovery.
It absolutely has. I was very convinced it was all real. I felt like I lived in a different reality than everyone else. I thought I was part of a bigger picture and that I was an important pawn in something much bigger than myself. And coming back from that has been really difficult. And every now and then it'll get to me and I'll tell my therapist and we'll talk it out and work through it.
So if you're out there thinking, therapy ain't gonna help me, I don't know, I'm here to tell you, 17 years in, Kit says, yes, it does for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kit, thank you so much for being here. Tell the listeners where they can find you online to learn more about you.
You can find me on multiple social platforms, but the one I am most active on is YouTube, where my channel name is SchizoKitzo. That's schizo like schizophrenia, and then Kitzo is Kitzo. In addition, I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, so you can also find me there as well.
Thank you again for being here with us, and to all of our listeners, thank you for being here as well. I'm Dr. Nicole Washington. You can find me on all social media platforms at Dr. Nicole Psych or on my website, drnicolepsych.com. Wherever you downloaded this episode, please follow or subscribe to the show. It is absolutely free. It costs you not a thing. And do us a favor, share the show. Send a text message, put it on social media, bring it up in a support group, send an email, send a postcard. Sharing the show is the only way we grow. We will see everyone next time on Inside Bipolar.
You've been listening to Inside Bipolar from Healthline Media and PsychCentral.com. Have feedback for the show? Email us at show@PsychCentral.com. Previous episodes can be found at PsychCentral.com/IBP or on your favorite podcast player. Thank you for listening.